Hey, what's up, everybody? Again, I'm in one of these series of times where sometimes I'm not as regular, and it's disappointing because I was getting a lot of really good feedback when I was more regular, and interesting feedback, things that people typically wouldn't say, which I thought was very, very flattering. So hopefully we can get back, and you got to do one before you can do a whole bunch. So very busy weekend at Perform Better last week. Last weekend, I came in Friday night, had my regular work stuff Thursday and Friday, and then got in. Sometimes when I don't always think Providence, I think it's a city. Growing up watching Big East basketball, Providence was just like Syracuse and Georgetown and St. John's, but it's a little city and there's no Ubers or Lyfts when you get in at 11:30 p.m. But we'll get to that in a minute because the talk that we did there, which is going to be roughly the same talk chopped down a little bit for time purposes at the Raising the Bar conference in Orlando, which you can find that information to sign up for. That's going to be live in suburban Orlando and also available online, and we're going to do a talk. I'm going to take some of the feedback that I'll get to from that talk and bring it to Orlando. What we did at Perform Better will eventually be on their app, which is always 100% free, and you get all the speakers, etc. So we'll get to that in a minute, but even before that, also some very flattering feedback, interestingly, of just like everybody, there's people that you have a good amount of respect for, and maybe you don't connect with them a lot, but whenever they tweet something, whenever they're putting some kind of content out there, you're like, I know I look at it, and those people were very positive for some of the things that they were able to get a look at through the T=R+ holiday sale, where we've got everything that we've previously done, but it was also the release of a very short breathing seminar that we did during the lockdown at New York Strong, which is Todd George's gym in Mamaroneck. And when we had done that, all of the proceeds went to the senior dog sanctuary that he and his wife run out of their house. And seeing these dogs a lot, I thought it was a good way to give good thanks for being a home while Allie and I were in Greenwich. So not only can you get the breathing seminar, but if you're going to get anything else, ACL in action, kettlebells, they're the newer. Obviously, everything else, T=R, T=R2, T=R3. Look, these things have some material that is dated. However, the thought process is not dated. I'll go back and randomly look at something on the website, and I'm like, okay, yeah, I can see that I wrote that. I don't know that I would say it the same way, but I think you'd find the same thing. There's clearly things. T=R, the first DVD is 2009 when that content was being put to PowerPoint. So I can't possibly suggest that it's all contemporary or things that I always would do, but the concepts, how you fill in the blanks is where the changes are. So that holiday sale is going to continue, and the feedback, particularly for the newer stuff, the ACL in action and the T=R kettlebells, was very, very flattering. So if you haven't checked that out, please take a look. But as I said, over the weekend in Providence, the first live event that Perform Better has done in quite some time, and one of the slides that I wanted to expound on, was one of the rehab programming concept slides, and really what that whole talk was trying to demonstrate to the listener, student, whatever somebody wants to call themselves. What I don't want is to look at somebody that they look up to and just follow their plan, because no one has the same context. And if you strip it back and understand more about physiology, more about neurology, less about following the charismatic speaker, you put them all together, and then you can wind up being somebody very, very special unto yourself. So at Perform Better, there were 16 little headshots of people that are fairly successful and a lot of folks doing things in a relatively different way. Well, if we can reverse engineer some of the science to what they're doing, and then you can kind of be your own Dr. Frankenstein. It's very consistent with how I've tried to communicate over many, many years, where the antagonistic statement is, fine, just tell me what to do and I'll do it. I'm like, dude, it doesn't work that way. Why is it so bad that you actually be your own scientist and take something that makes sense and do it with 5 people, and then do something a little bit different with another 5 people, and then maybe something else with another 5 people, and let's see what we can see. And look, we're not worried about publishing this data, but what you might be able to find that some of the things that some folks suggest are irrelevant. So it doesn't make that choice better, but it may not make it worse. And there's lots of different ways of trying things just to see what makes the most sense for one individual's context. So let's get to that rehab stuff. And there was a slide where I put 4 concepts, and I'm going to talk more about those because I think they're going to make a lot of sense. Where this would fit into not so much the therapy that a good PT or chiro or manual therapist would be applying. That's that's one of the runways that we're going to look at, for somebody, even an acute injured individual. What are we going to do with our manual therapy? What are we going to do with modalities if that's your jam? What are we doing there with manipulating rest, etc.? And then all the way over here, you've got your fitness approach, because I would, until to the end of time, unless I'm pushed to believe otherwise, the humoral and hormonal effects of training are probably much more effective than what we think we're doing for therapy. Yeah, that kind of supports the narrative of training equals rehab, but there's some scientific merit that guides those decisions. And I don't know what the downside is of training intelligently just because a segment hurts, and we're going to get to that in terms of lateralizations. But the first piece in how you run this middle shoot, which is what I'll call the rehab or the therapy exercises, where we're not necessarily targeting fitness and we're not doing things passive. We have running this active exercise route. And the concept number 1 would be underloading. Now, I'm choosing that word specifically to create an awareness for everyone to work together. You're not necessarily underloading. It's almost this hyper exaggeration to get you back to properly loading. So if rehab for meatheads is your back hurts when you deadlift, so you take a wheel off, so now you got 3 wheels and your back still hurts. And then you take a wheel off and you do 2 wheels and your back still hurts. But then when you do 1 wheel, your back doesn't hurt anymore. I don't know the reason for that, but I don't really care because pain is incredibly factorial. What I'd like to now do is deadlift with 1 wheel, and let's do as many reps as we can, sets of 100 even. So then what are we doing? Well, we're properly choosing the load. Now, is there therapeutic value to conventional deadlift? It's not the point. The point is that when we look at, whether we're looking at a global movement like the deadlift, or we're looking at a medial collateral ligament, which, it's funny how things go in runs. Saw 2, within the last few weeks, significant professional athletes, but also one a few months ago as well, in a young lady. So what can we do to properly load the MCL, which we wouldn't normally be able to do because of pain or the assumption of how that ligament would potentially react to a normal or a conventional fitness load. So we have to track it. And in that case, I think it's a very, very easy way to systematize those thoughts of choosing exercises is by using the 4x4 matrix, particularly the first number of the 4x4, which is the position. So let's say if we're going to talk about the MCL, maybe we'll be prone, affected knee flexed. Let's get internal and external rotation, because in the internal rotation, we probably are stressing the medial collateral ligament. Now, that might be a global postural stretch approach if we're going to hold it there 30 seconds, where Maybe it's a Sarman approach where we're getting minimizing relative compensatory motion. A lot of stuff is the same. We would see sometimes if somebody moves it very, very fast, their knee pinches. But if they move it really, really slow, it doesn't pinch. And that's probably evidence that's more of a perception than a ligamentous re-injury. So we're going to look at proper loading. If we go into hands and knees, we can again continue with some type of tibial rotation. We might not have that deep flexion. What are we going to? How can we load there? On one knee, we can look at that front knee, the phasic side. So you've got the stable side with your knee down, the front side, foot flat, knee flexed, and we can run rotation that way. And then standing, we can look at D2 flexion and all of the different patterns. And then from there, you can do band, you can do a plate weight, you can do you can use some of the eccentric loads, you can use Kaiser. And now you've got 4 days to do the same exercise, but you're teasing different types of inputs to the same loading pattern, and then certainly progress to things that are faster. And then maybe after the knee is healed and the body is even on its way to recovering, you now still have this paramount exercise that can live at the end of your warm-up, which ironically, we love throwing med balls. We don't always do things as explosively with our lower body in the rotational patterns, which I think should be kicking, which is what we're talking about here with this a D1 flexion pattern, where think about like if you were going to kick a soccer ball and there was reverb, you'd probably feel it in an injured MCL. Creativity is endless in this underloading concept. But that's how you start to build out packages. Your SFMA is always going to help you find other things that contribute back to the injured area, and you just choose different loading patterns. And that's these can be mobility drills, they can be motor control drills, but we just have to pick the correct level that is going to, at worst, not make anything bad, but hopefully promote an increase in direction of collagenous tubules, so that when there is healing, the recovery is in parallel with the healing, meaning, it doesn't hurt anymore, the MRI doesn't show any more tears, but did we remodel that ligament or soft tissue, including bone, in an ideal fashion? So that's number one. Number two would be taking advantage of lactic environments. Now, when we look at some of the things we talked about in Terrible Tuesdays, concentric heart training, where you're just bringing it 30 to 80 seconds, certainly could be longer if you're a different type of athlete. I'm talking mainly field sports and repetitive explosive athletes, 30 to 80 seconds of explosive even effort, followed by 3 to 5 minutes of rest. Now, that's we've talked about that's primarily training, maintaining a motor strategy, that's your even effort, under extremely high heart rates, talking like well above 165, 170, 180 plus. Can you get there, number one? No, then that gives us an idea of how we can improve our heart function at a central level, but ultimately, can you maintain a desired form of exercise? That's the even effort. Now, what else is happening is obviously you're developing lactic systems. So we're going to get that huge amount of rest. Well, it's really not that huge, but it probably appears to be very, very long rest to mitigate the acidosis, the hydrogen that comes along with the development of lactate. And then, of course, the lactate is able to be used efficiently in the next round, because that's why we want to stay in this longer periods of time, so the aerobic system is a primary energy source. But the other thing that happens when you're constantly developing these lactic environments is over time, the body will then be triggered, stimulated, adapted to increase human growth hormone. And that's money. Human growth hormone in a safe and ethical way that also gets us other things is a big, big money victory. And that's where we'll say, dude, don't even do any rehab, just train and let the human growth hormone allow the acute injury to be healed. Now, how you choose those exercises is where lateralizations are crucial, where we have to certainly be aware that if we are stimulating any kind of sympathetic response from constantly pushing through pain, then what I'm saying is kind of bets are off. It doesn't really work as well. So choosing exercises that, good news, don't really matter. The exercise doesn't matter. They matter when we're looking at developing these underloading patterns. But for when you're doing your fitness, you can just do bodybuilding. You can do, being on one knee and do all your exercises because you're in a boot and you're sprained ankle. So a lot of these things, the exercises that you choose for your lifting and your fitness or whatever it is, as long as it doesn't provoke the joint system that is injured, painful, or significantly loss of mobility or motor strategy, just pick other things. It doesn't matter when you're in rehab because we're assuming that we're getting as close to the exercises that we would want to carry over to our sport or terminal activity, but they're not available because we don't have the warranty or the access to get into those joints. Now, there was a fourth concept that I think most people, are probably injured in, and it was the discussion of using machines for rehab. And I'll tell you a story. Val Nasetikin, I talk about him all the time. I wish I was be able to be around him more often. Founder of Omega Wave. We're coming back from lunch at Bear Burger on LaGuardia at NYU, and we're talking shop, and we talked about machines. And Val was like, of course, there's no role for machines in the high level of carryover to training athletes. But Charlie, in rehab, I'm sure you would use them. And I said, well, I'm always getting thrown upon situations where ACLs are poorly rehabilitated months or even years, and their quads are completely unacceptable. And that's probably at a time where the most usage of knee extension machine or other strategies for seated knee extension. Obviously, I used to think that this was heresy, and I was wrong. But not using a bunch of other machines. And look, when you start to travel and see all these there's different machines. Some machines are definitely better than others. And they do allow for a little bit more than 33% of the value from training in one plane. So the using machines in the rehab process or with your lateralizations to create these lactic environments is something that should be strongly considered. And as we're looking to develop specific soft tissues, being able to get after the quads, the hamstrings, the groin. If you see a lot of glute medius tendinosis, I'm talking about these silly in and out machines, but maybe they're not so silly. And in learning some things from Keith Barr, who I think will be one of the primary presenters at the NFL Combine Strength Coaches Conference. Like maybe these ideas really aren't as dumb, and that was really a big part of my talk, where it's just meant to think. I don't care if you do what I do; it doesn't matter. But I think using machines for the rehab process in the rehab exercises, or even having a place for somebody that has an opportunity to train a significant amount of time over a weekly microcycle, I think there's a role, and I don't think it's as horrible a thing. And you're able to maybe get some more physiological volume without the mechanical load, because if I'm primarily interested in that unique hormonal impact, I don't care if the movement carries over to the sport. I want to create the internal macro level of stimulation so that we can then seemingly have this magical recovery process. Nothing's magic. Magic is just what somebody else doesn't understand. But I'm very proud to see that when you try these things, you're just learning. And if it didn't work, don't do it again. I do think you need to see twice before you make a decision. So again, those concepts are underloading, which really means properly loading, using machines to feed that process, creating intelligent lactic environments, moderate levels, mild levels. We're not looking to bury people. That is not the answer, but we're looking to create, longer intervals of maximal efforts. However, remember, when you're going for a minute, you're not going nearly as hard and as fast as if you would be doing something for 10 seconds. And then appreciating lateralizations, where can you get as close to the terminal exercises that you want, but but maybe do something that looks a little bit different that you wouldn't normally do, but you're doing it for a reason. And if you can run the regressions and your rehab exercises and run your lateralizations and run them in parallel, you do everything correctly, you're going to get to your number one A-list exercises sooner than later. And you're basically recovered, which is a word that we used again in that talk. So that's going to be at the Raise the Bar conference. Please take a look at the links to sign up for that. You will be able to get it online. The other thing that we have coming up is, outside of filming some content actually this weekend here in Palm Beach Gardens, is the Kabuki online conference. And my topic there, and I just let Brandon choose it for me because I don't always have a good idea of what people want, but also importantly, I want to know what they think is going to sell, what's going to flatter their brand. When you work for somebody else, I just think that's a good idea instead of me just picking something and then finding out that it causes confusion in the market. He went and looked at some of my older or more recent stuff, but stuff that was done a while ago, and he wanted me to expound on using the role of using screening during the warm-up, which I don't think is a very wise choice. You can go back and we'll probably find the link to that here with this video to go back and see that, maybe 10-15 minutes. I know we're up to 20 minutes on this, but I'm sure if you're still listening, then I guess it was worth your time. But we're gonna create a presentation on the why screening does not make sense to do in a warm-up for some very, very useful reasons. It's like putting flour and peanut butter together. You need flour and you need peanut butter to make peanut butter cookies. I'm not sure they always go together. So we're going to be talking about that with Kabuki, and again, there's a sign up for that as well, where you're going to get access to a whole gang of other speakers, whether you see it live or on demand. So hopefully that all makes sense. We're definitely going to have some good content, not only from myself but from the other folks here at Coastal Performance in Palm Beach Gardens, and very excited with how things are coming along here, and the two offices in New York City, or Kyle's got them on lockdown. Some really, really good things, good run right now, and hopefully we can finish up the NFL season very similar to last year. So, all right, well, last thing, as always, if you happen to you happen to see anything, you see something, you say something. So hey, anybody seen a leprechaun? Say yeah.